From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Good morning, security gang. You feeling overwhelmed because of Patch Tuesday? Are you? Well, good morning. Welcome to the show. We're going to try and make Patch Tuesday pretty easy for y'all. On top of Patch Tuesday, a whole bunch of more stuff is happening in the world of cybersecurity. So great to be with you this morning. Let's get the show going. Again, traveling very early where I'm at. I'm pre-recording this morning's show, unfortunately, because I've got commitment when the show is supposed to air. That's part of the challenge of having to do this while traveling. So I do apologize, but a coffee cup cheers to all of y'all that have your mug of coffee ready to go. Let's dive into the Patch Tuesday for the month of November. Let's go ahead and get going with Microsoft patching 91 different flaws, including 4 Zerodays, 2 of which are being actively exploited. The number of bugs, 26 of the 91 are elevation of privilege vulnerabilities, 2 are security feature bypass vulnerabilities, 52 are remote code execution, 1 is an information disclosure for denial of service, and 3 spoofing vulnerability. This does not count 2 edge flaws that were previously fixed on October 7th. Now, there were 4 different Zerodays that were exposed as part of the 91 different flaws. Microsoft classifies a Zeroday flaw as one that is publicly disclosed or actively exploited with no official fix available. The 2 actively exploited Zeroday vulnerabilities in this month's Patch Tuesday is the NTLM hash disclosure spoofing vulnerability, that's CVE 2024-43451. Microsoft has fixed this vulnerability that would allow remote attackers with minimal interaction with a malicious file to remotely attack the NTLM hash. They could use it to authenticate as a user, and then from there, obviously, move around. Microsoft says Yisrael Yesharon of Clear Sky discovered the vulnerability, and that it was publicly disclosed. It didn't share any further details. CVE 2024-49039 is a Windows task schedule elevation of privilege vulnerability. This specially crafted application could be executed that elevates privileges to medium integrity level. In this case, a successful attack could be performed from a low privilege app container. The attacker could elevate their privileges, execute code, or access resources at a higher integrity level. Microsoft says exploiting this vulnerability would allow an attacker to execute RPC function that are normally restricted. The flaw was discovered by Vlad Storayov and Bahar Sabatori of Google's threat analysis group. And if I got your names wrong, gentlemen, I do apologize. CVE 2024-49040, a Microsoft Exchange server spoofing vulnerability. This is also a fixed Zeroday. This one is not being exploited in the wild, but mind you, you should be paying attention to it, as well as CVE 2024-49019, an Active Directory certificate services elevation of privilege vulnerability. Also out there, so you want to make sure you get these patched up as soon as humanly possible. Excuse me. Enterprise software maker Adobe on Tuesday rolled out fixes for a wide swath of critical security flaws across most of their product lines, including code execution issues in the Adobe Commerce software suite. This is part of the Adobe regular Patch Tuesday commencement. 48 different security bugs were called in with urgent attention to several critical severity bugs in the Adobe Commerce and Magento open source platform, as well as InDesign and Photoshop suites, as well as Illustrator and Substance 3D Painter products. Adobe addressed the importance of fixing the Adobe Commerce bug, which carries a CVSS score of 7.8 and does expose the e-commerce shops to code execution attacks. The bug CVE 2024-49051, excuse me, getting talk this morning, impacts versions 3.2.5 and earlier of the Commerce Services connector, and Adobe strongly encourages users to update to 3.2.6. They've also documented a major security defect in Photoshop and warned that both Windows and macOS users are at risk of code execution. Now, Adobe's the easy one to update, right? Just push it through, get it done as soon as humanly possible. Citrix and Fortinet also announced patches for over a dozen different vulnerabilities, including high-severity flaws that impact NetScaler for Citrix and FortiOS for Fortinet. Citrix released fixes for 2 bugs in the NetScaler ADC and gateway, 2 issues in session recording, and 1 security defect in the Zen server and hypervisor. CVE 2024-8534 was the high-severity NetScaler vulnerability described as a memory safety bug that could lead to memory corruption or denial of service and only impacts appliances configured as gateways. So you want to make sure you get that addressed in the new version. Fortinet also announced fixes for over a dozen vulnerabilities, including 2 high-severity bugs in FortiOS, Analyzer, and Manager. The OS issue is CVE 2023-50176. An unauthenticated attacker could be allowed to hijack a user session via a phishing SAML authentication link. Patches included in FortiOS version 7.4.4, 7.2.8, and 7.0.14. If we move to SCADA, Siemens, Schneider Electric, CISO, and Rockwell Automation have all released security advisories. Siemens published around a dozen new advisories based on severity scores. The most important vulnerability is a critical deserialization issue in the telecontrol server basic, which can allow an unauthenticated attacker to execute arbitrary code on the device. So there's that. Siemens also patched roughly 60 different vulnerabilities, including critical issues. Many of them impact third-party components used by the products. In the Synac NMS and the Scalance M800, the company addressed a dozen flaws in each product, many of them impacting third-party components. So Schneider Electric published 4 new advisories. One of them describes a critical EcoStruxure IT gateway vulnerability that could allow an attacker to take control of the system and obtain sensitive information. So you want to make sure you get those addressed. CISO, for their end, published 3 new advisories. One covers 3 critical vulnerabilities in the subnet power system center OT device management platform. The second advisory describes 2 vulnerabilities in the Hitachi Energy TRO 600 radios that could be exploited for command execution with root privileges and obtain valuable configuration information. Rockwell Automation, for their end, published its own Patch Tuesday advisory for this flaw, which covers a high-severity remote code execution vulnerability in the Rockwell Automation Factory Talk View ME. So you want to make sure you get those updated. If you haven't subscribed to our Substack, what are you waiting for? jamesazar.substack.com. Go there, subscribe, get all the latest and greatest, including a written version of this podcast, as well with key takeaways that you can just simply share, copy, paste, download, do anything you need to do with it in order to help you build cyber resiliency from the show. Also, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and on your favorite podcast listening platform. If you thought the MOVEit breach was done, well, not so much. Delta Airlines and Amazon confirmed this week that the employee data that we're seeing on the dark web was actually part of a MOVEit leak from the breach that happened last year. The data set includes things like names, contact information, and office location, but no sensitive personnel information. Delta teams work continuously to safeguard Delta's data, as the security and integrity of the information is the utmost important. The statement comes in response to a dark web post by a threat actor using the moniker Nameless, who said they plan to release troves of data stolen through the MOVEit vulnerability, which resulted in a raft of breaches in the summer of 2023. Delta, alongside Amazon and 23 other companies and governments, were named there. An Amazon spokesperson said the unnamed vendor received employee contact information but does not collect more sensitive data like social security numbers, ID card details, and stuff like that. So we'll see here, but I mean the breach for MOVEit impacted 2,773 organization with the records of nearly 96 million people being exposed. So we're still seeing the impact of that now, almost a year and a half later. When we move to China, a hacking group that's believed to be a Chinese state-sponsored is compromising 2 websites with ties to the Tibetan community in an attack meant to install malware on user computers, according to findings released on Wednesday. The hack of the Tibet Post and the Gaudamed Tantric University websites appear geared towards obtaining access to the computers of people visiting them to obtain information on them and their activities, according to analysis by the Inskit Group. The threat research division of the Massachusetts-based company told Recorded Futures that the hackers, known in the report as Tag 112, compromised the website so that visitors are prompted to download a malicious executable file disguised as a security certificate. Once opened, the file loads a Cobalt Strike beacon malware on the user's computer that can be used for key logging, file transfers, and purposes including deploying additional malware. They don't have visibility into this, but this does seem to be something the Chinese would do. Vault Typhoon, for their end, after the dismantling of their botnet earlier this year, are now rebuilding their KV botnet malware. The Vault Typhoon is a Chinese state-sponsored cyber espionage threat group that's believed to have infiltrated critical infrastructure among other networks worldwide. Since at least 5 years ago, their primary strategies involved hacking SOHO routers and networking devices like Netgear ProSafe firewalls, Cisco RV320s, Draytech Vigor routers, and Access IP cameras. Install custom malware that establishes covert communication and proxy channels to maintain persistence. In January, the disruption of Vault Typhoon was announced, and now security scorecard researchers are saying they're seeing activity that Vault Typhoon is actually rebuilding the botnet. They've also dubbed it the JDYFJ botnet by security scorecard due to the self-assigned SSL certificate seen in the compromised devices, attempts to mainly compromise Cisco RV320 and 325 and Netgear ProSafe series devices. So the Chinese are not going anywhere. Sticking to the axis of cyber evil, the Iranian threat actor group known as TA455 is being observed taking a leaf out of the North Korean playbook, trying to orchestrate their own version of a dream job campaign targeting the aerospace industry by offering fake jobs since at least September of 2023. Google's owned Mandiant is tracking them as UNC 1549er or Yellow Dev 13. It's assessed to be a subcluster of APT35 that's charming kitten or mint sandstorm. For those to do that, they're affiliated with the IRGC. The group is set to share technical overlaps with clusters referred to as Smoke Sandstorm and Crimson Sandstorm. Earlier this February, the adversarial collective was attributed as behind a series of highly targeted campaigns aimed at aerospace, aviation, and defense industries, including Israel, the UAE, Turkey, India, and Albania. The attacks involved the use of social engineering to employ job-related lures to deliver backdoors dubbed as minibike and minibus. Proofpoint said it also observed TA455 use front companies to professionally engage with targets of interest via a contact us page or a sales request. Clear Sky said it identified several similarities between the dream job campaigns conducted by the Lazarus Group and TA455, including the use of job opportunity lures and DLL side loading to deploy malware. So all in all, they're building on that, and that's something to be made aware of. And finally, the Biden administration seems to be hell-bent on entering this disastrous United Nations cybercrime treaty, which is coming under fire by U.S. legislature, as it should be, and digital right advocates, that this will expose political descendants and other groups to abuse by authoritarian regimes. The treaty, originally proposed by Russia, calls for international cooperation and investigate serious cybercrimes. Law enforcement in one country could gain access to electronic evidence stored in another country, according to this treaty, and also hinder the sovereignty of nations. The international cooperation has been covered by the Budapest Convention. However, neither China nor Russia were part of that agreement. This deliberation, U.S. officials still see the UN Cybercrime Convention as an agreement that could help make progress in the global fight. No, it won't. The UN is a useless organization. It's absolutely useless. This administration cannot enter this agreement at this time, especially since they no longer have a mandate. The country has voted, and they should not enter this agreement. But again, the foreign policy of this administration has been lukewarm at best, obviously. And so hopefully they don't enter this agreement, although it seems like they're hell-bent on making it happen there. So we'll hope that the meeting today between President-elect Trump and President Biden will ensure that this issue is shelved for the moment until the new administration comes in and obviously axes this horrible UN agreement. The UN has no business doing any of this. They don't have the authority, and number two, it opens up political descendants in that leave countries because they don't have the ability to free speech to essentially be able to get investigated due to cybercrime laws. And the cybercrime could be defined by that nation as violating our cybercrime laws. So obviously you can tell that this is significant. That's it for our show this morning. We'll be back tomorrow with a whole lot more, 9 a.m. Eastern live with all the latest and greatest. Until then, have a great rest of your day. And most importantly, y'all, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.